Well, as you can see, it's not as wet as back in the late 90s because there is definitely drying portions on that track. As we take you directly to the Mitsubishi Fuso starting grid, results reflect their positions yesterday, and it's an all FPR front row, all Toll HSV dealer team second row. Two very strong teams in this year's championship. James Courtney will start alongside Stephen Richards, and we will take you all the way through this entire grid. Neil, the question is, there's only one place to be, and that's out front. How do you handle this if you're mid-pack with all that spray?
Very carefully. You've got to really tread gently, and unfortunately, once you're about half a dozen cars back in the queue lead, the hard part here is just trying to manage not bumping into another car. And if you check the splits at the end of the first lap, you'll find that the key blokes could be as much as 30 seconds in front of some of those behind. You know, it's just a really difficult thing to negotiate in the midfield. So they'll be looking out the side of the car to the white lines on the road, and they'll be looking towards the high-intensity rain lights that'll be switched on, and also the brake lights, believe it or not, to take their cues for where they should or shouldn't put their foot on the brake pedal. And the key to the first couple of laps here is literally survival.
We get back to the guys who experienced some hard times. John Bowes' car, there was a small fire, there was a crack in the fuel line, and fortunately that didn't go to anything more major, more serious. And Bowes spent a lot of time in the pits. I think finished something like 6 laps down, but at least finished and got some points. Jason Bright had never won in a V8 supercar here at Tasmania's Symmons Plains, but he did yesterday. Can he go and do what Garth Tander did 12 months ago and get the clean sweep? We'll find out. Here's Greg.
Vastly different temperatures to yesterday, Lee. Ambient 14 degrees, on track at 16. A big change of pressures in the tyres for James Courtney. The boys at Stone Brothers Racing ran right up to the 1-minute board. They have dropped the pressures to around about 27 PSI. So Courtney on those siding laps looking for an improvement in grip by way of repressured tyres. Darryl?
Not a lot of time, Greg, for the drivers to get used to this wet surface. The track surface changed here a few years ago. They only got the one drive through the pit lane here to have a bit of a side of the circuit before the start of this race. Drivers talking about roll centre adjustments even while they're doing that drive through.
There will be some nervous men down on that grid. These are not comfortable conditions, and you get the feeling there's going to be chaos.
There's a little bit of repair work that's been done around the track too, Lee. There's a couple of places down at the hairpin, I think, and at turn 7 where the track just broke up a little yesterday, so it's got some epoxy filler in there. Last car's in position, we're ready to go.
Let's do it. Race 2, Tasmania. It's wet. This could get ugly. Who got the better of the start? Rick Kelly got away reasonably nicely, but it's Jason Bright, yesterday's race winner, will lead them into the first turn. James Courtney squeezes through on Stephen Richards, and Todd Kelly pounces.
Pretty clean through 1 and 2. I raise my eyebrows there because invariably someone makes contact down there, but they've got the job done. Can they do the same thing up here at the hairpin at turn 4?
On the outside, Cam McConville on Will Davison and Dean Canto. That's the long way round at the hairpin. And both Jack Daniels Commodores side by side. Dumbrell looks like he's got through on Stephen Richards. So not a great start from Stephen. We've got one around. It was Max Wilson.
And 3 cars tangled up, including Steve Owen and Paul Morris, just trapped on the outside because Max ended up round in the middle of the corner there. Someone was giving him a nudge on the way. All clear though, which is important.
Jason Bright's the race leader. Mark Winterbottom is second. Scaife trying to force his way through. He's got around Russell Engel. Oh, Engel gets a little loose. Boy, this is tough. Very, very tricky conditions.
Stone cold tyres and brakes, and they're trying to race people. It's very difficult to just gingerly find your way here.
Here's the overview, the menu for today. 2 140-kilometre events, as I mentioned at the top of the show. We just did 3 100k events last year, so much more work to do today. Here's Scaife, under brakes at the hairpin.
Remember that we've had very little wet running in the recent past, so any of the less experienced drivers, like for example there Will Davison, this is something of a new adventure for many of these fellas. Scaife's done a lot of wet weather running over the years, but it doesn't come as any news to anybody around this unfortunately dry country at the moment. There's not been a lot of rain anywhere, so this is a relatively new phenomenon over the recent past, Greg.
And that's exactly the comments that Will Davison made to me prior to this race. He said, I've not had a lot of time in these things in wet conditions. Remember, though, he was top of the wet morning warm-up at the Sandown 500, but they've gone for a compromise setup in that car for this race. He feels, and so do a few of them in pit lane, that we could get a drying line or a drier set of circumstances as the race goes on. So Davison not with a full wet weather setup, and a nervous moment for Mark Scaife as he came in on those siding laps. He had a helmet, Neil, with a clear visor, which you would expect to run in these sorts of conditions, but it had a problem with the cabling for the radios, so he couldn't hear his crew chief, Rob Starr. They changed helmets. He's running the tinted visored normal helmet that Mark would wear.
Winterbottom's in trouble here, so too Rick Kelly. His teammates just got around him. Tander will take a position away from Rick Kelly. Now Winterbottom's been able to escape. Jason Bright, who's just set the fastest lap of the race, has bolted. Now the teammates go side by side at the fastest point of the track.
Teams always hold their breath when they see their two cars very, very close in these sorts of conditions with so much at stake. But Garth looks like he might have a little bit of pace just at the moment. Fastest lap of the race, Jason Bright, 59.3, 4.6 second margin. Here's the replay, the Zinger replay of the trouble up at the hairpin. Watch Max Wilson because he got a little touch up in the mid-pack there. And Steve Owen and Paul Morris just trapped on the outside. Here it is again from the different angle. Steve Owen that made the contact in the midships of Max Wilson's car, and Paul Morris was literally a passenger in the process.
Look at James Courtney, he's having a strong run. We mentioned Will Davison hasn't done too much time in wet conditions in V8 supercars. Neither's James Courtney in the gel wet Ford, and he's humming.
The rules dictate that whenever the wet tyres are on the cars, that high intensity rain light must be switched on. That helps with the visibility. There's not a lot of water flying at the moment, and as Greg said a moment ago, for the time being, we won't have a dry track, but the way we describe it is less wet. There'll increasingly be a couple of less wet grooves on the track, and you can see that it's beginning to form now. The problem with that is that you can race around with somebody like James is doing here at the moment. You can see the wheel grooves here down at turn 2. Close. But if you go to pass anybody, as Mark Scaife puts a move there on Stevie Richards, and Cam McConville runs through as well, when you come out of the groove, like Stephen did then, even by a couple of centimetres, you go into an area of the track where there's just no grip. There's more standing water, there's rubble and dirt, and you just disconnect from the road, essentially.
Two big movers in the pack, as we see a nice move there. Whoa! Dean Canto on Stephen Richards, who's having a pretty troublesome time out there. Two big movers in the pack, Lowndes and Scaife. Lowndes has come from the back of this field to 18th, and Scaife's come from 16th to 8th. Here's the Zinger replay.
Stephen just came in perhaps a little quick, and he couldn't get the car turned down there at 2, and then that put him on top of the sawtooth ripple strip, the painted ripple strip, and one thing's for sure, on the glossy red-white paint down there's not a lot of grip.
Here's your order. It's Bright, Winterbottom, Tander, Rick Kelly, James Courtney, Todd Kelly, Dumbrell is 7th, Scaife is 8th, McConville and Canto the top 10.
Just to cement your comments there, Neil, a moment ago about the drying line, Kevin Fitzsimmons from Dunlop said to me prior to this race, this is going to be an absolute lottery, and watch out for anybody who tries to overtake or steps off the drying line. If you end up in the wet stuff, he said, and try and outbrake somebody like here at turn 3, so you can end up in all sorts of trouble.
Scaife's giving them braking lessons down there at the hairpin. There's another one. He's got past Dumbrell, and he's moved up to 7th after starting 16th, so he's done that in only 5 laps.
It's highlighting, as we look at Steve Owen transiting the lane, it's highlighting those cars that either in their base setup or in the quick adjustments they've done this morning to adjust to the conditions. You know, they've just maybe changed the roll bar setting or a little variation in shock absorber or whatever. It's highlighting those cars that are well matched to the road. It seems as though at the moment both the Jack Daniels cars of Steve Richards and Paul Dumbrell appear to be a bit of a handful in these conditions. 7.5 seconds is the margin. Jason Bright over Mark Winterbottom. Let's go on board with Mark Scaife. Zinger replay. This is Paul Dumbrell on the left, and he whips around the outside. Remember, we said that in the track map at the top of the show. You can pass on either side on this racetrack at the hairpin.
How fast is Jason Bright going? A new fastest lap, and he has a 7.5 second lead over his teammate, this man, Mark Winterbottom. Bright is flying in that Cat Ford.
Tander's on the march, though, so he'll be really in the thick of this battle momentarily with Mark Winterbottom, but Jason Bright's got a car that appears to be beautifully matched to the road at the moment. An 8.3 in these conditions is a very, very good time. You can see that the telltale of how wet the track is what level of spray there is behind the car. And you can see there on those shots that it's not very much at all at the moment. And that gives you an idea of the margin between first and second. And at the control line, that's 8.9 seconds at the moment. Then it's very tight in the next group of cars. McConville off at 6.
Very common place to go off here, and he gets overtaken by Craig Baird in the Team Kiwi entry. Damage to Dean Canto's car. What's happened and where has it happened?
It's crunched someone or something. Bonnets.
Got a fair bit of smoke there, but see how it goes.
As you'd expect at this stage of the race, guys, among the many bits of information and data that the teams keep an eye on during the race, one thing they're watching very, very closely is the updated internet forecast and weather pattern for this area. Just spoke to Rob Crawford a moment ago from the Toll HSV dealer team. Obviously, as you can see, they're quite happy with the car's pace on wet tyres at the moment, and they're going to let this thing run for a little while and just see what happens with the weather. But there are some dry tyres on standby in a number of garages down here.
That's the critical remark there, Greg, because what they don't want to do, even though they are in the compulsory pit stop window at the moment, is to put another set of wets on, only to have to pluck them off and put dries on later. I can't imagine, certainly for a little while yet, that we're going to be starting to think about dry weather tyres. So at the moment, you just need to play the waiting game. Look at the radar pictures. Need some spotters around the place who've got a good view, perhaps on the main spectator hill here, of what it looks like to the north and the northwest, where the wind has been blowing from the last couple of days. Whoa, Todd Kelly had the rear brakes locked in his battle there with James Courtney into turn 4. Bright continues to go quicker. He's done 2 fastest sector splits in sectors 1 and 2 on this lap. He's got the margin out to nearly 10 seconds on the last lap.
As you mentioned earlier, that compulsory pit stop window is now open. Steve Owen earlier, that wasn't a compulsory pit stop, that was a drive-through penalty for the contact with Max Wilson. As this battle intensifies, and immediately behind here is car 2, Mark Scaife, playing catch-up after yesterday's frustration. If you missed it, he had a left rear wheel that was not put on correctly. Came loose, had to return to the pits. It was costly.
Rick Kelly's just drifting a little at the moment, Lee. He's just searching now for some wetter track seam there. Just hunting the wet bit of road just to try and cool those wet tyres. Whatever settings he's got in that car are just not ideally matched to these conditions at the moment, whereas his teammate Garth Tander may have gone a click either way, maybe taken some shock absorber out of the car just to loosen it up, perhaps soften it up a little, who knows, 1,000,001 combinations. But he's just got a car that's working pretty well at the moment, although he's 11.5 seconds behind Jason Bright.
There's a move brewing here. There's something coming, and it's not too far away, but James Courtney is holding his own.
The problem for Todd is that he can't come too far out of the drier groove on the racetrack, or if he does, he risks getting out of shape and then either hitting James or just going off the road. That's the frustration in these conditions. Sometimes you've just got to wait and see whether you can pressure the lead guy into some kind of manoeuvre that just enables you to get your nose up the inside without actually giving him a shove.
You and I were mentioning just a few moments ago during the break, this has not been as chaotic as we might have thought.
Nothing like it. I think it's because it's not as wet as we thought it was going to be. Can Todd get up here? No. But look how far wide of the mark James was to try and defend. New sector splits that represent fastest laps for Jason Bright. He's on target to do another one. He's done a 7.4, quickest lap of the race, and this lap will be better again. He's at 11.8 seconds in front now of Garth Tander. Yeah, whenever there's not as much water on the road as the expectation, then the aggravation level proportionately drops. So we thought it was going to be much wetter. Even 15, 20 minutes ago, I thought this was going to be a massively wet race, but there is a little bit of wind around. Nearly 30-odd cars blowing around, and the tyres are starting to well and truly be warm now, and so there's a groove, as you can see. And you can always tell by the amount of mist behind the car, and there's nothing apparent behind Jason Bright's car there.
A new fast lap as Tander searches for some moisture for his tyres. Bright has now broken into the 57.4 range, a 57.41, and he has a 12.2 second lead over this man here.
All the smart boys are seeking water. They're just hunting around on the straights as Bradley Jones slides off in the Team BOC car. He's down at turn 6, between 6 and 7. Oh, he'll actually battle to get back on there as he comes up the hill. A bit hard to get it to get traction coming over the ripple strip. No, he's away. You see it's not even wet beneath the surface there at the moment. There's actually more damage on the front left corner of that car. I think it's a flat left front tyre. Craig Lowndes is blazing through the field. He's been moving up. He's in 14th now. Greg, what can you add?
Just the Toll HSV dealer team, they tell me, Neil, that it's a brake bias issue of some kind for Rick Kelly. He's just not happy with the setting on it at the moment. He's been trying to get the setting right for the conditions, and he's found that one way he's locking fronts, then he's locking rears, so he's just not quite happy with his personal setting on it at the moment.
You can tell that it's not a happy car, so the main mission for him at the moment is to do exactly what he's doing, which is 6th and a bunch of points. In the round so far, he's showing 190 points. Craig Lowndes is doing what he needs to do as well, and that's, well, here's a replay of what happened to Brad Jones. That was the reason why the front left was caved in. Shane Price just making contact there with the front left-hand corner of the Team BOC car. And it started when Brad got crossed up at turn 6, couldn't quite control the slide enough, and then the two just interlocking as they came off the corner. Lowndes is up to 14th. That's a mighty performance from position 27, but he is battling a little bit. He just ran wide down here at turn 2. Here's the replay. Skating off the edge of the road, probably lost 2 or 3 seconds there, and a spot to one of the Tasman Motorsport entries. And they're parking the Bradley Jones car, I understand, but that damaged the front left-hand corner. I spoke to Brad last night. He wasn't a happy camper. He was really happy with the car performance on Friday, and then yesterday when the warfare broke out on the front straight, something fired through the radiator of that car and it blew all the water out and then melted an engine, and so they parked the car without a result. The difficult weekend has become even harder today for him.
It's a very big pit window. They've gotten to lap 41 to complete their compulsory stop. Just to give you a rundown of who's where, it's Bright, Tander, Winterbottom, then these guys, Courtney, Todd Kelly, Rick Kelly, Mark Scaife is 7th, Paul Dumbrell is 8th, Stephen Richards 9th, and Will Davison is 10th, and there it is, the end of the road for Brad Jones and Team BOC for this race anyway.
Well, they've taken it into the garage because you can more readily access your bits and more people can work on it, so they may well still try and get him out just to get some points, although Bradley is actually getting out of the car there, I noticed, so I think you're right. I think it's game over.
This could get ugly in a second. Sorry, Greg, it's on here between Courtney and Kelly.
And just to add to it, Lee, it does sound as though they may give a bad sportsman flag to James Courtney. I just intercepted a radio transmission a moment ago, and it does sound as though Courtney could cop the bad sportsman flag.
Todd's tried everything he possibly can to find a way by the Geldwin Ford. So far, no luck.
Massive lead for Jason Bright. It's an outstanding performance. You get a bit of that free of charge early in the race because you're the one that doesn't have the impaired vision, but having said that, he's got car pace as well. So not only did he start with the right track position, but he's been able to march on with it with the car performance. Here's the Zinger replay. Shows us what happened here to Craig Lowndes down at turn 2. And in fact, because the Tasman Motorsport car is already in front, this must be a second occasion. So I think this is actually the following lap, because remember the other replay that we saw, we watched the Tasman Motorsport car go by. So it's twice for Craig off the road down there, Greg.
Mark Scaife is in the lane, boys. They've got slick tyres for car 2. Slick tyres about to go on for Mark Scaife. So the rear wets will come off. These boys who work the left rear, they won't make a mistake today. They'll make sure they're going to do all 4 tyres, as you can see. So Scaife, the first man to make the move to dry tyres.
I tell you what, that's a very, very brave move. But given that Mark's playing from a long way down the field, he can afford the gamble. It's not like he's trying to protect a championship, but he'll want to be driving off his fingertips for the next few minutes because the thing will be really hard to drive.
John Bowen, Dean Canto fighting over 19th place. And Max Wilson's in the mix there as well after being turned around right on the very first lap. Darryl.
Well, Bradley, obviously conditions, or in wet conditions, it's easy to make a mistake, and unfortunately Shane Price collected the front of the car. Has it broken an upright? Or?
Yeah, I just was really disappointed. You know, I stayed behind him and you know, he run me wide on a couple of corners, and I had a fair bit more car speed. And I just got in a bit deep under brakes and ran right to the edge of the track, and, you know, he cleaned me out and pulled the front corner off it. So really disappointing, but, you know, it's been one of those weekends, really.
How's the track out there? Mark Scaife's just pitted for slick tyres. Do you think that's a good decision about now?
Yeah, I think it's probably a couple of laps early, but, you know, he's got nothing to lose. So I reckon probably, you know, five or six more laps. It's not drying as fast as I thought it would, but slicks will definitely be the go soon. There's a dry-ish line, but not dry enough. I see JB's just going on the slicks, I reckon it's a little early. Anyway, we'll see.
Thanks, Bradley.
No worries.
It's especially early if you have to be forced offline, because when you first go out on slicks, they're stone cold. See, there's a dry groove where the heat's in the tyre on the loaded side of the car. When you first go out there, you've got to keep making room for everyone that's got hot tyres. And often this is why you see in Formula 1 Champ Car in this category, a guy that initially goes out on slicks when everyone else is on warm wets, who has to step sideways for them. They step onto wetter road, and that's where the slicks are dodgy. But if you can just wobble through the first couple of laps, find your rhythm, get a bit of warmth in the tyres, then you're okay. But see, this is exactly what I was talking about. See, Scafie just out there in the greasy stuff, and all of a sudden you get a short back and sides from your nearest and dearest mates.
Mark Winterbottom has found a very happy setup. This is the replay on board with Scaife. Winterbottom is flying. New fastest lap, 57.2, and he's reeling Garth Tander in.
Now, just further to this, because it's really important in the way the race will unfold. Once he gets some heat into the tyres, and because everybody else is doing it later, he's going to be in much better position in the longer run, assuming it doesn't rain again. So by being a pioneer and a bit of an adventurer, you play a higher risk game, and provided there's nothing to lose, like Brad said a minute ago, then there can be a yield in it. So there's every likelihood that because I think I saw Stephen Richards do the same thing there in the lane before, you may well see those cars blaze. Greg, you were there?
Car, Neil, the Paul Dumbrell car, okay. which went. But your point, just to add to it, is that the rivals for these guys are very, very closely keeping an eye on the drivers that have switched to slicks. And a lot of the engineers here in pit lane have already made radio calls to their drivers to get some sort of feedback on the track condition, and then when to come in and make that change to dry tyres.
Have a look at this. Courtney's lost 2 positions. Rick Kelly's gained 2 positions, and Todd Kelly maintained station.
And he's got someone's autograph in his rear bumper there as well, so I think there may have been a little bit of aggravation. This is that background shot of the Jack Daniels car will invariably be Paul Dumbrell on those slick tyres, really battling to find grip and temperature. It could be as many as 4 or 5 laps before those things start to even get rid of the little shakes and shimmies they have. What have we got here? This is Todd Kelly down the inside of James. Now the rear bumper's okay on it there, so there must have been something else happen after that.
Heavy involvement in that massive crash yesterday.
All right, just wait, mate, just wait.
Cam was saying, I need the screen clean because I can't see, and no one was out there with anything ready for it.
Clear to go.
And to top it off, Neil, they had a problem with the right rear, or the driver's side rear. They had to take off the dry tyre and wheel. And I think it may have been just from the distance here in pit lane that captive wheel nut may not have been aligned right when they've gone to try and do it up.
Yeah, that was a bit of a clumsy one, unfortunately, and even the shots that I'm looking at the moment for Cam don't look like he's got too much vision out of that car. I don't know whether it's inside or out, but yeah, that was a very, very slow stop, unfortunately, for him.
Here's Rick Kelly. He has caught up to Mark Scaife.
New fastest lap of the race, Garth Tander, 56.2, and he's pulled the margin down now to 8.8 seconds. And everybody at the front of the field still on wets is looking really carefully at those on slicks, and they include Paul Dumbrell and Mark Scaife. As recently as a lap or 2 ago, Scaife was about 0.9 to about 1 second slower than the wets. Bridie in, and this will be interesting, but I will assume that he goes to a slick tyre, and Darrell's going to be Johnny on the spot.
Neil, you've mentioned it, and it's common sense, like you said, but Larry Perkins standing in the garage here yelling out to all the crew, do not bring him in until Scaife's time match the times of the wet weather tyres. So exactly what you're saying. Jason Bright in.
Yeah, because what Mark's doing for everybody is he's giving them an indication of what they need to do, and that's why Phil Keed has waited.
After this car. Go.
Oh dear, he stalled it. That was hurt. That's really hurt. He had an 8.8 second lead over Tander. He's just given away. In net terms, I reckon he dropped 3 or 4 extra seconds there, so he'll have halved that lead. That one hurt.
And if Tander can have a good stop, slick, this is going to be close between those guys, between Tander and Bright, and Winterbottom's coming into his own as well.
Now, we're Mark Scaife and Paul Dumbrell. Paul Dumbrell's just done the fastest first sector in this motor race on slick tyres. There's his teammate Stephen Richards. LP's been around way too long to fall for the mistake of putting the slicks on too early. When you're in a key position, you can play the game a little if you're further down. Here's Mark Winterbottom, second in the race at the moment. And And when they come onto the concrete here, they must be very, very careful. There is no grip when it's wet. The cars will skate right through position. All 4 tyres, of course, slicks are on.
Go, 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 go.
And slots in without any trouble behind James Courtney, who's peeling off.
Can't help but be impressed with the way Mark Winterbottom has carried himself in this year's championship. Here's Courtney.
Lowndes just done the fastest lap of the race, 56.1.
Courtney stalled the car here yesterday. He's asking Paul Forgy for something, and Forgy's response was, there's no time, there's no time. Courtney said he really had to settle himself down yesterday after stalling in the pit stop and just focus and get back out there, and he did that and finish in the top 5.
What happens there, Lee, is the anxiety in you wants to stomp on the throttle as you drop the car on the ground. Oh, one of the WPS cars was high and wide at turn 4 there. The temptation is to just drop and go, and you use a little bit too much throttle percentage and the car coughs and stops. You've got to run really low throttle percentage when the pit lane speed limit is on, down in the very low teens. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14%. Great shot there. And it is Todd Kelly that comes in for slick tyres.
Just an update on the James Courtney scenario. Lee, the radio call that you picked up was in relation to the front windscreen. He wanted the front windscreen cleaned, but I think when he made the call for it was too late in the stop. They ran out of time.
I'd have to say that given it's a wet and dirty race, that the driver shouldn't have to call for it. I mean, it just should be something that's automatically in the work routine for these teams. You know, if you can't see where the car's going, it doesn't make any difference how you adjust the shock absorbers.
Spoken on behalf of the Drivers' Association, written and spoken by Neil Crompton. It's true, I agree.
Just
I agree with you. Yeah. Because when we got that shot of McConville, you couldn't even see McConville in the car, could you? From the front. This will be interesting to watch to see where he pops out in relation to Jason Bright. Let's keep an eye on this.
Go, 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 go.
Clean exit.
Look how slippery that concrete is.
Now, where is the Cat Ford? Here it comes. This is going to be close.
I reckon they might have him here. Good efficient stop from HSV. Where does he pop out? Oh, he's slipping and sliding. He's in front of him.
Wow. So, remember how Jason Bright got held up in that stop? There was a big pause. He came in with an 8.8 second lead over Tander. Tander now has the upper hand. But this guy's in the groove. He's up to temperature. He's up to speed. Tander is doing that. This is the point in time that Bright has to eat into that margin.
So Lowndes is in this lap.
Now you can see from even these wet weather tyres that have come off Stephen Richards' car, the right rear, which is the working tyre on this circuit, the dry line on the track, they haven't even got a bit of a feather on them. They haven't over-temperatured. They normally get a bit of a blue tinge, and if they get too hot. So with these cool conditions today, these wet weather tyres were still pretty strong even when they pitted.
So that's Lowndes in the background as Rick Kelly comes in and out. Russell Ingall.
So Bright's already gone by, but we need to keep an eye on. There goes Winterbottom. So how close can Kelly be to Winterbottom? He's being held up a little at the moment. He's trying to get by Dean Canto. There's Lee Holdsworth. So now can be a time for Rick Kelly to pounce. There is his brother Todd. Then through comes Courtney. So Rick Kelly's gained some ground there. So he's in a very comfortable position. Here's Steve Johnson.
Fastest lap of the race, James Courtney, at 55.1 on that last lap. He's currently in 6th. Another driver screaming for the cleaning of the screen is Lowndes. Again, it mystifies me.
Go, go, go.
Much longer race than yesterday. Extra 40 kilometres. And we're on lap 32 as the individual battles continue.
Lee, you raised the point before about the concrete surface on the lane, or the area of the lane closest to the pit garages here at Symmons Plains. What the teams have been doing during this longer period of the pit window, they have been constantly brushing and squeegeeing the concrete to keep it as dry as possible and prevent the guys from skating when they pit in for those tyres.
And it really wakes you up when you come off the asphalt onto the concrete, and all of a sudden the car just, it just feels like it gathers pace. Look at this, Stephen Richards on Russell Ingall down at turn 2. And Stephen deciding better not to be an adventurer out on the wet track on slick tyres. Whoa, Russell's off. When you first go out on a stone cold slick on a track like this, they rattle and shake, and it's like you get all this feedback through the steering wheel, and it's quite an odd feeling as the tyre begins to temperature up and pressure up.
Bright has now set the fastest lap of the race at a 54.4. And look at this, he's right with Tander. So the traffic, has that played a hand? It's on. This is for the lead of this motor race. Bright has got momentum. Tander hugs the fence. Defensive line up into the hairpin.
Russell just bluing on the radio that they should have told him that they put slicks on the car. He said, what tyres are on this?
Look at this. This is for the lead. Gotcha. Through. He tags Stephen Johnson. Tander comes back though. Forceful driving from Jason Bright. But he saw an opportunity and took it.
Wow, isn't that amazing? Turning into an intriguing motor race.
We had that momentum as Tander came out of the pits, and that lap while Garth was getting up to speed and temperature, getting the tyres up to temperature, was very valuable for Jason Bright. Yesterday's winner in the first ever FPR 1-2 is carrying on with it. But has Tander got something in response?
Technically speaking, those that have gone back on the slicks are supposed to turn those rain lights off at the moment, but in the frantic workload, it's not happening in some cases.
So the order for you is Bright, Tander, Winterbottom, Rick Kelly, Todd Kelly, James Courtney Scape. Here's the Zinger replay. Overtake for the lead. Watch the cat forward. Garth Tander is back in front, and this is the reason why.
Yeah, Jason Bright having a moment in the braking area. The Zinger replay shows at turn 6. He just pinched the rears, got sideways, got out in the wet groove. It flicked him off the road onto the grass. He lost a lot of time and a bunch of places. You see Winterbottom goes through. There goes Stevie Johnson, and now look at this. A little bit of pressure driving here. Rick Kelly up the inside of Stephen Johnson. Todd Kelly's in there as well. They go side by side on the exit of 4. James Courtney and Jason Richards have been alternating in fast sector splits. So these varied conditions putting a bit of pressure in everyone's game, and Tander's the leader, and I'm checking the margin between Tander and Jason Bright because Bright's got a very quick car, but he's now 8 odd seconds behind.
Someone has had a massive moment on the front straight. Did you see all that dirt? There was debris, there was signage, foam signage, and we're hearing it's James Courtney has had a massive moment on the front straight. There's dirt spread all over the circuit. As we now look at the new man in second, Mark Winterbottom.
Craig Lowndes is, oh, look at that, Morris off. Makes life easy there for Winterbottom. Craig Lowndes is on the radio saying, I cannot see out of my windscreen. And he's done a mighty job up to 12th position from 27th, but if he can't see out of the car, it's going to make it difficult to make progress from here. New fastest lap of the race, Stephen Richards.
The reshuffled, revised order is Tander, then this man, Winterbottom for FPR, Bright, Rick Kelly, Todd Kelly, Mark Scaife from 16th to 6th.
Part of the windscreen thing will be the fact that the teams just have not been playing that game for a long time. So
when was our last wet one? Sandown.
We had some wet weather at Sandown, and then I think you've got to go back to last year before anyone was dealing with it. Oh, Courtney here, the Zinger replay. This confirms what you were talking about before, Lee, with all the trash that's all over the road. So James had a monster moment. He might have stepped the right rear off on the exit of turn 7, which has then spun him across the road before he got down to the hump there at 1. And I think it's popped the screen out of the car when it's whacked the wall. Russell Ingall's got damage as well. It's a war zone.
And look at Lowndes lurking in the background. There's positions and championship points to be had here for Craig. If you've joined us late, his teammate Jamie Whincup is not in the race, and this is the reason. Russell's right rear.
He's dive bombed Jason Barguana down there and made some contact, which has just pinched the right rear guard down on the tyre, and you can see the debris flag being displayed down in there in the braking area at 4.
It's a reasonably high or tall pit wall here, Neil, as you know, and I think you're absolutely right about James. I couldn't tell where there was contact with another car, but there was grass and all sorts flying over the pit wall, so that would suggest that the right rear has stepped off at some stage, and someone else has gone in front of us here. One of the Valvoline cars, Canto's gone.
Huge moment there, and John Bowe makes light contact with him. He scattered one of the foam signs, and Canto's had a monster moment. And it's because they'll have dropped the right rear off in the long loaded left-hander at turn 7. Oh, he's reversing. Oh, steady here, Dean.
Okay, now you can. You can reverse up. Oh, yeah, okay.
Safety car, I think, is going to be deployed. We've gone full course yellow, damage everywhere. At least the team owner can find reason for a grin.
That is Gary Rogers. You hear us refer
She's got a bit of extra rear wing on it.
Yeah.
I don't think that's part of Operation Blueprint, that one.
It's been an eventful day for Dean Canto. The car already had damage on the front left.
Okay.
I hope you remember to duck down there before, Rusty. Yeah, there he goes.
Whoa,
Runs wide.
whoa.
Big monster moment on the grass. And there's the sign. I think the Big Pond sign looking a little worse for wear, and eventually John Bower makes contact at about 15 k's, so no great damage done. That could have been a lot worse. Spectacular.
Yeah, he got out of it not too bad, really, didn't he? John Bow had nowhere to go, just a very light tap. The second GRM car comes through with Lee Holdsworth, and everybody else is saying, what is this rubbish on the track?
This compresses the field. What does it mean? It gives Jason Bright a bit of... What is going on there with Marcus Marshall?
He almost rammed right into the back of Steve Owen.
Actually, I wouldn't be surprised if they give him a little spanking for that, because when you've already seen a safety car board, to nearly have a moment after there's a yellow flag out and the safety car board displayed, race control tends to not see the humour in that.
Watch this, watch this. Will Davison's coming up pretty hot too, and Dumbrell and Marshall.
Yeah, that's a little bit strange, because the field was already under the control of the safety car. The safety car boards were displayed, the yellow flags were out. A bit hard to say you didn't know it was happening.
Wow, that was a close call.
Now this gives Jason Bright a birthday. Quick car, compressed now onto the back of his teammate Mark Winterbottom, who in turn's on the rear bumper of Garth Tander. And 42 laps banked in a 58 lap race, so we're going to have a pretty vigorous sprint to the end.
You can see out of turn 7 or turn 8 here, as you mentioned earlier, where the Canto ran out on the grass, and also James Courtney. I was standing on the pit wall here for a while, and with the track drying and a fair bit of drive and hook up here, the cars, some of the cars that had gone obviously for that wetter setup look very soft and loose coming off the turns, and as soon as they get onto the white line here, it's still damp just off line, and then they're breaking traction out onto that grass.
I don't want to tell old tales here, but I seem to recall someone who may work with us in the commentary box having a moment like that some years ago and spraying mud over some members of pit lane. Do you know who that might be, Lee?
I think he's sitting very close to me, actually.
I'll deal with you knuckleheads later.
Hey, you didn't have your melon hanging over the fence, did you, when Canto went flying by?
Tell you, it was like someone did a big mower job down the side. There was grass and all sorts flying across the pit wall, so it was unbelievable.
It's really spectacular bit of racetrack down there because of the speed of the cars, and it's a long load corner where you're accelerating. Fantastic to watch the cars being controlled through there in all conditions, and if you do make a tiny mistake, then you can have a big moment.
We've been referring a lot to the contenders, the championship contenders. So let's highlight for you exactly where they are. The championship leader, Rick Kelly, is in 4th. However, one of the guys who's chasing him is Mark Winterbottom. Winterbottom is in 2nd. So he's the big points earner here out of the contenders. And then Craig Lowndes, who lost the lead of the championship yesterday, has done a superb performance to come from 27th to 12th. So valuable points for Craig there. That's where your 3 main contenders are. Russell Ingall can still mathematically do it. Russell's sitting in 10th. Now here's an overview of Rick's stats, just the 1 race win. Of course, that was on the Gold Coast at Indy, but he's been remarkably consistent with his podiums. 6 and 3 as far as 2nds and 3rds. That's why he is the championship leader.
And he grabbed that extra 3rd yesterday, so that's helped the cause. By contrast, Craig Lowndes, bunch of wins, bunch of 2nd places, bunch of 3rds, but yesterday that number 27 against his name on the result sheet, that's a bit ugly for him, and that's hurt, although he's recovered now to 12th, and his points haul for this weekend so far is only 90 points. Went off at massively high speed. Unfortunately, the gravel arresting the car. He didn't end up down there in the earth wall, but a big moment into turn 6. You may well be right, it could have been the contact as he came through the hairpin after the nose-to-tail contact with James Courtney. That in itself didn't do the damage, but perhaps something else when he was pushed off did. And this is the trouble that Lee Holdsworth found himself in on the outside of turn 2. Look at the dirt on the racetrack down there offline. I mean, it's just so grubby down there.
To clarify the situation, we had a restart during the break. This is now another restart. Here we go. This is for real. And we have a 7-lap sprint to the end. So much on the line here for Mark Winterbottom, sitting in 2nd place. Valuable championship points to be had. as Tander leads them into the hairpin.
Mark Winterbottom Lee has got all his auxiliaries off at the moment in that car. The demister, luckily the weather has stopped. They're low on voltage in that car at this stage, so Mark Winterbottom, the team, a little worried about that car.
Yeah, with all the oil coolers switched on, with the headlights on and with the screen heaters on, the numbers can be pretty bad as we look at Craig Lowndes here battling Bargwanna 10th and 11th and England. In fact, he's gone up to 9th. So Lowndes is on a charge. Well done, Craig Lowndes, from 27th.
It's Sandown all over again, isn't it, from where he came back from a lap down. Superb performance. Back up at the front, though. It's on. Tander's got a handy half-second margin over Winterbottom, then Bright, then Rick Kelly, Todd Kelly, James Courtney, who's been in the thick of it today, as we climb on board with Lowndes. And look how difficult it is to see.
And all the corners are left-hand, out the left-hand side of the screen apexes. That's what Craig was complaining about on the radio, that he couldn't see where he was going.
Jason Bargwanna immediately ahead. That's a superb performance from Jason too. Big pat on the back for the WPS Ford driver, because he qualified well down the order. Started the weekend in 27th place. So to be up into the top 10 by race 2, outstanding. This is at the front, first, second, third. It's going Tander's way. This is where he was yesterday, about this stage of the race too, when the car dropped to 7 cylinders. This is Rick Kelly.
That's a moment he doesn't need. Through the sign, out the other side. No, that's gonna mask the air intake across the front of the car. FPR are seeing the funny side, but that won't be a smile that's shared at Toll HSV. So the water temp is going to go berserk, and off the road, Tony Ricciardello has made a mistake. He'll have gone wide at 7 as well, crossed up over 1 and has blocked the pit lane exit. Now, will this car make it to lap 58? They will be staring at the telemetry, looking at the water temperature.
As we go. Still in there, mate.
That's Eric Pender.
Zinger replay. This is Kelly. He got loose.
He was actually battling with his brother. And then he skates through the big pond sign. A couple of those have seen better days today. When he come out the other side, no damage done, but he's caught up a bit of the styrene in the front of the car. There's the moment. I tell you what.
Got away with that.
Yeah, he did a great job to car control his way through that nightmare.
Almost got away. We don't see a safety car deployed for Tony Ricciardello. We are still under green flag conditions. And here is the Ricciardello. Fujitsu Ford. Oof, that was a hard contact.
Yes, it started when he would have dropped the right rear off at 7. And they'll just be able to, I assume, wheel that car out of the way. However, the splitter, the front of the car's still actually on the racetrack. And unless it can be safely done, I doubt whether the race director will want personnel on the racetrack while the race is still active.
Local yellow only.
So Tander is the race leader. We've got local yellows and a debris flag, but we've still got it. Oh,
he's swerving, trying to dislodge it, trying to get it to drop off, and it just won't move.
And while he's distracted, he's got to be a little bit careful that he just doesn't end up. Oh, Eric has just told him to come in. He said we have to come in. He can't get it off the front of the car. This is.
Unless you stop and try and really.
Neil, the problem with Rick Kelly is at the moment, you mentioned that Ricciardello was blocking the exit to pit lane, so the team are trying to confirm that at the moment. They wanted Ricky in the lap earlier, but they're worried that if he comes in, he'll be stuck.
It's folded down. Sorry, Daryl, but this is a critical thing to talk about. It's broken.
Yep,
there'll be some air in the front of it now. They might be okay.
Final 3 laps, and Rick Kelly's heart would be in his mouth. Cannot believe it. He got the championship lead yesterday. All the focus is on him. He's won Bathurst, but he's never won a championship, and he could do it this year.
And, you know, he wouldn't have been able to get... Daryl's right. He wouldn't have been able to exit the pit lane with the Fujitsu car. Look at this. Will Davis and James Courtney spirited running through turn 2. Rick all cleared. So they've got good numbers again for water temperature. Fastest lap of the race this lap, Mark Winterbottom. He's 0.7 of a second behind Garth Tander. You can hear tyres screeching in the background. It's turned into a wild affair, this race too. And Paul Morris has gone into the gravel at turn 4.
Last 2 laps, I would say they may leave him there. We probably won't see a safety car for that. We're going to let him race to the finish, and what a race it's been. What an exciting race this has been. very eventful. There are a lot of wounded race cars out there on this circuit at the moment, as Tander, Winterbottom, Bright remain the top three from Todd Kelly, Rick Kelly, James Courtney and Canto's woes continue. This is a beaten up Gary Rogers Commodore. Look at this, it's on for the lead. Winterbottom's got a sniff.
He's got the margin down to nothing. There's a local yellow up there because of Paul Morris off in the gravel, which I don't think they'll be able to do much about at this point. They'll prefer to run the race through green to the end.
Remember the story I was telling you earlier? He said, I want to win a V8 supercar race on my own. Mark Winterbottom, you now have a chance. But Garth Tander has won plenty. He is not the easiest customer to get around. And that Toll HSV dealer team Commodore is quick.
Rick Kelly hangs on in fifth.
Great job, mate. Good job. Great job by the pit crew.
Tander takes out race 2 under pressure. Well done. 2 different winners from as many races, and look at the pace that Will Davison's got at the end of this race. Sensational performance to grab 6th, just behind Rick Kelly.
There's a bit of shuffling there at the end. Courtney's name's plummeting back down the order, so for some reason James Courtney went missing. He's taken a hit in the rear, so Todd Kelly 4th, did the fastest lap of the race, 52.9 on the last lap, then Rick Kelly 5th. Here's James finishing now, and Craig Lowndes finishes 9th. So the championship contenders, 5th Rick Kelly, 9th Craig Lowndes. Lowndes has got 100 points for the round. Rick Kelly's got 193. What a heart stopper for these blokes.
So Tander gets the race that he feels and knows that he should have got yesterday if it weren't for that engine problem, but he's a winner now. Last year's round winner back on top here at Symmons Plains in a very, very intriguing race. It had a bit of everything. It was relatively calm when it was wet, and once there was a dry line and slick tyres went on, it got quite chaotic. And that sets us up for a very interesting 3rd and final race, with the round points very, very close. The VB scoreboard shows us the positions, and you have to give a big pat on the back there to Team Better Electricals' Craig Lowndes, 27th to 9th. Bargwana was a big mover, and so too was Will Davison to finish in the top 6. There were some hard fights out there, and there are some scarred cars. Andrew Jones in 13th. That's a solid performance, right behind his teammate Jason Richards. And Stephen Johnson there in 16th. Cam McConville, Dean Canto, they were in the wars, weren't they? And then we get back to the boys who had a very tough one. Did not finish as for Morris, Ricky Adello, Scaife, Baird and Brad Jones.
There's a few mysteries of the universe that need to be unravelled after that one.
Boy.
What an amazing motor race.
Jason Bright and Mark Winterbottom, who had a great run. The FPR boys, they're really in a purple patch at the moment, and in particular this young man. They call him Frosty, and this is the year of his career. Now, this is what happened to James Courtney. Did he get a touch-up from his Gold Coast friend Will Davison? No, Will got through cleanly.
And we think that there may have been an engine problem, that the thing was running off song after he came out of there. That it's been biffed around at the front and knocked around at the back, so there's got a few war wounds. But let's go down now to Greg.
Well, this was the result he was certainly hoping for yesterday as the Toll HSV boys congratulate him. Well done, Garth Tander.
Thanks, Trusty. Yeah, it was a tough race, starting the wet like that and not having done any wet running on this surface here before. So, yeah, tough one, and then dried out and when to pit and when not to pit. So, yeah, pretty happy with that.
Wild race in a number of ways with things going on around you. How mindful did you have to be of all that?
Well, I think you just had to survive that one, and if you survived it, then you're going to look pretty sharp. So didn't push that hard early in the wet part, and then once it got sort of found the grip level, started to push on a bit, and Bridie was really, he was gone, and I mean, I think they must have had a slow stop, and we got around him, and then it came out on cold tyres, we had a battle, and he went off. So, yeah, I'll take that.
Enjoyable race result. Go get him in race 3. There's Garth Tander. Let's go to Darryl.
Well, Mark Winterbottom, it's been a fantastic year, and that was a terrific race in difficult conditions.
Yeah, it was a good one to stay out of trouble, but I tell you what, it was a long race. Every time you got a bit of momentum, they get on the radio, safety car, so you stop, build momentum, stop, and yeah, it was a long race, but happy to finish second. I think, you know, we had a little bit of speed on Tander at the end there, but, you know, we're looking forward to the 3rd race. We've got good points. That's what we've got to do.
Your points are important, but you mentioned the track patches overnight early in that race really caught you out. It was really slippery and a lot of understeer.
Yeah, it took me a couple of laps to work out why I had a lot of understeer into turn 7, and after I worked that out, the car was quite quick in the wet, but I saw Bridie disappearing, and he was obviously missing it, and I was hitting it, and after I sorted that out, I was okay, but you know, other than that, there was a pretty clean race.